Boom, according to that I'm live. Welcome, this is Tokyo Tonight. I'm on time, which is unusual, so that's a good way to start the show. I'm just looking at the screen, and you know what? It looks like it's more crammed up than usual, which isn't what I... Well, you know what? It does work. It does work. So this is the right layout. It is the right layout. It's good to see you all. Yeah, welcome. You would have seen... Probably about half an hour ago, in fact a few hours ago, I uploaded a new series in Japanese with the first episode, the introduction episode, which is actually by Rochelle Kopp. I put that live tonight at 9 o'clock. The rest of it will all premiere at once on Wednesday at midday. That is a series from a seminar that Rochelle Kopp and her co-author of her book, How to Work with Foreigners, which is a manga guide to working with foreigners. They did an event where I was one of the guest speakers back in 2019, and we recorded the event, and we've had the video for a long time. And we just actually chopped up that recording, 2.5 hour sort of thing, into a bunch of separate sort of videos talking about different topics. It was actually a really good event. It was all in Japanese, however. We were holding back the release of the videos for the release of the book, which the event was based on. But that is that actually went live last year, but for various logistical reasons we never actually did the proper launch. But Rochelle pinged me a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, why don't we just do it? Why don't we just launch the video and promote that? So that has just gone live today. So I apologize if you're subscribed to me. You may have noticed like 10 videos going live all at once. Again, I thought, given the number of other videos, 2.5 Voyages, we had the sustainability with JJ Walsh the other day, as well as the wonderful work that Erin has been doing, cutting all the short videos, which I'm really enjoying watching back myself. So I realized there's a lot of videos bouncing around in the feed, and since these videos are in Japanese, you have to understand Japanese. I can't subtitle 2.5 hours. It's roughly an hour to subtitle a minute. That adds up to more time than is practical. The auto translation's been getting pretty good. So if you can't understand Japanese, it might be worth a go lately. I wouldn't have recommended it a few years ago. But anyway, I did upload that all at once. So I figured you then have the Netflix choice of binge watching or watching at your leisure. So you'll be able to do that from Wednesday, midday Japan time. But yeah, you may have noticed that in the feeds this evening, in addition to setting live this talk for Tokyo Tonight. I've picked a few news stories, but not many big news stories. Of course, there's the regular ones, which I'll be going through. But got a few things to talk about, so it should be a bit of fun. There's been a lot going on just in terms of just making videos with other people and so on. So that's been fun and awesome to see there are already so many people in the comments. In fact, let's dive in and see who is in the comments. Remember, I do love it. Just if you're here, say hello. It's just nice to see who's here. It's nice to say hello to you. Remember, if you want to get my attention, say a question to me, say something, just grab my attention. Just say Hiko Simon like Sergeant Bilko did, and it will flash orange, which will cause it to grab more of my attention. So definitely do that. And who have we got? We've got Shubis, who is not late. No, you are not late, Shubis. Great to have you here. We've also got Odie Jr. I'm glad you couldn't wait. I couldn't wait either. It's great to see you, Odie Jr. Love that thumbnail. Mr. Cordy Chap, not late. Can't wait for a technical feature Hiko will make. That's right. I actually made it tonight. I think I got all the technical issues out of the system with the 2.5 Voyages last night. So, Sergeant Bilko, good to see you. Couldn't rank it. Awesome to see you as always. Got all the regular gang here. We've got Erin, of course. Good to see you. Happy Sunday indeed. Good morning to you, Erin. Great to have you in. Thank you again for the edited videos. And I know you're having a busy time, so it's cool. I appreciate when you have the time that you put those out. They are really going great, so I appreciate that. And everybody, thank the moderator. Tai Nakamura, excellent to see you. Good morning. Good to have you with us. Who else? Got Andrea Moboy. Good to see you. Obviously, I think a bit easier now that daylight savings ended. So good to have you here in the chat. Who else didn't make a technical feature? You're scared, Mr. Cordy Chat. Well, touch wood and all that. You never know. That it's still early in the show. It's cold and rainy in Melbourne and 9 degrees Celsius. Well, don't worry, because it's probably going to be 45 degrees Celsius in a few hours. That's the way I remember Melbourne being, that it swings back and forth. Brianna W, good to see you. That jumped ahead there a moment. I think I got you there. Brianna W, good to see you. Hope I didn't miss anybody there. We've got Butter. Butter is being detected by the censorship algorithm there, so there you go. Wingstar, hey now, good to see you, Wingstar. Nice to have you back. We've got Peter Nankaro. That's a name I don't recognize. Nice to see you. Good to have you, Peter. And hi, right back at you. Good to have you in the chat. Jays M, good to see you. Hi, I was watching some of the How Not to Screw Up vids while waiting. I'm glad you enjoyed them. I've actually done a bunch of these series with Rochelle, and I did them for a reason there, actually. It's a chance that I don't talk much about my professional life or my work, or, you know, I talk about a lot of stuff here, but I share what I share, and I don't share what I don't share. But what I do with Rochelle is I share stuff that I don't normally share. I talk about stuff that I've learned from 23 years of working in Japan. So, yeah, I actually, you know, some love, and there's a lot of information in those videos that I don't share anywhere else. And I've got a lot to talk about, actually, about those. It's much more connected with my day-to-day life. So, yeah, I'm glad you found those, JZM. I mean, I hope you found them interesting. It's always a problem when you find the topic interesting that, you know, it's sort of like the videos you find real super interesting, people don't often get, and you get too wrapped up in them. I hope it's not like that, but yeah, very, very glad you found them. How Not to Screw Up in Japan, did a whole bunch of them as well, so glad you discovered that. Indeed, Aaron, don't forget the like button. I do appreciate it when you like it, so yes, thanks for the reminder there. Barry Convex, hello, good to see you. Who else we got in here? We've got Andrea Mulboy. Nup, real cool weather this week in Melbourne. Yeah, it's been kind of, well, it's been chilly. I shouldn't complain, but, you know, it's been getting warm, and then we just had like a cold spell where it returned in Tokyo. So it's probably going to go back to being warm soon here. We've got DJ Sunny Side Up, sleeping in your van tonight. Surf trip, very, very nice. I saw the photos on Facebook. Whereabouts are you surfing, man? From where you are, you like go down to Shikoku, right? The Pacific side. I know it's kind of famous for having good surfing down there. I've never been there, but yeah. Scorpios value privacy. As a Scorpio myself, yeah, damn straight. I don't know if you're talking about me or yourself, but it applies, and it's true. Yes, and Mr. Cordy Champ, the t-shirt reminds you of Hawaii 5-0. This is like a YouTube 5-0. It's a cool shirt, actually. I do like this. It's like, I shouldn't, by all rights, this shirt should no longer be surviving, but I've held on to it because it's one of those shirts that even when it gets crappy, it still looks kind of cool, so I hold on to it. But yeah, I think once I went to go jogging in this, and yeah, the missus was like, no, seriously, please don't. So apparently I have restrictions on whether I'm like, oh, this is a cool shirt if you ask me, but there you go. Kochi, there we go. Kochi, actually with 0 cases of COVID today. So for all the reasons, that is a great place to go surfing. So there you go. Yeah, and JZM, so you live as an expert, so as an expat. So you once you get on a roll, so many things can get mentioned. Oh, that's exactly it, right? And this is one of those things, I'm sure, with anyone who's lived here for any length of time, any of the topics that we talk about on that show, there's like a million different points and directions that it can go. And everyone's got their own different experiences, so it actually always turns into an interesting discussion when you do it. So that's the great thing about that series. Look, we're 8 minutes in. If you haven't said hello yet, say hello, even if it's your first time, even if you're like shy, you just want to put like a dot. It's just nice to see who's there. And let's dive into the topics. I should call out Sainted Sir, good to see you, and welcome to the chat. If you haven't seen, yeah, Victor was like, we're going to get the band back together. We're going to do some more 2.5 Voyages, and it was fun doing a 2-person show last week, and yesterday doing the show with Eric and Katie, who I kind of knew about. I'd seen bits of their videos, and I'd seen them sort of moving around, but ahead of that show, I actually, the show was on Give Me a Flake Man's channel, so go and check it out, definitely. I shared the link in my Twitter and so on as well. But I watched a few of their videos properly before having them on 2.5 Voyages last night, and it's a really good channel. I mean, they are a really interesting couple that adventurers, I think, is the term I'd use. They just do a lot of really interesting stuff. They travel a lot. They show off Tokyo really, really well. And they were really cool to hang out with last night. So definitely check out the 2.5 Voyages last night from Victor's channel, and check out Eric and Katie. They were really, really cool. And if you like what's on their channel, I mean, they're very cool people. Definitely subscribe to them. It's a channel worth following, I think. Just, the content is good. It justifies it. So definitely do that. We've also got Dan H, good to have you in here, Dan H. Good to have you back. And yes, indeed, let's jump into the topics, shall we? I tried to put all the Olympics and COVID stuff at the back so that I'm trying to talk as much as possible about other things, but we'll see how we go. And yeah, let's dive in. Boom. So first one, so I actually just kicked off the show saying before, Gaikokujin to no hatarakikata. So as I mentioned, if you want to hear me speaking in Japanese, there's one video of me speaking all in Japanese, and there's a couple of other videos of me being in panel discussions, just talking about working in Japan. And this is actually, that whole series is it's advice written for Japanese people from foreigners on how to integrate foreigners and how to treat foreigners in your workplace, and what to consider. Illustrated by Chomaro, the kind of quasi IT engineer celebrity at the top right, and the thumbnail's kind of cut off, but you can see Rochelle Kopp's hand there and the book on the side there. It's a cool book. It's got sort of mangas and then essays in Japanese with sort of tips and scenarios and so on. And of course, these things are interesting because they also work both ways. But it was cool being at an event mainly of IT engineers. And I have experience in IT, so I sort of gave my own thoughts on working with foreigners, both overseas and having them come and join your teams in Japan. So it was very, very cool. The series is, as titled, it is all in Japanese, but if you can understand it, definitely check out the series. It goes live at midday on Wednesday. I'm very proud of the cool thumbnail that I made, actually. It's kind of funny. What held me up for like 2 weeks from releasing the series was making the 3.5 second theme song and the animated intro of just basically taking that and animating, having the gaikokujin to no hatarakikata, having things flying around and stuff. But I made a little, I don't know, I thought it was kind of a TV documentary type image of what a 3-second little jingle would be. Yes, I'm satisfied with that. It is not in the video. It's on the intro video that I released tonight, but it's on all the episodes that go live on Wednesday. So check that out. And that's another thing that I'm releasing. I see more people pinging me. Peter Nankaro, like following Eric and Katie, definitely. And yes, Andrea Moboy, Dan H, you have some West Coast butter in your fridge. Very tasty. Thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me. The butter supply right now is stable. The commissariat seems to be permitting the people to be able to get butter without queues. But of course, we don't. We take it day by day here. Yes, I'm guessing it's the butter emote. I don't know. Again, obviously the algorithm has just detected unusual butter emoji activity on this channel, and that is what is happening. So this is some news, in fact most news that Sora News picks up, I pick up actually first from Japanese media. We seem to follow a lot of the same sources, and then they go ahead afterwards, and I sometimes feel like, oh, are they following me? But it's not that. We're just following the same sources, and they put it into Japanese. However, this one slipped past. This one they definitely got all themselves. So yeah, apparently this guy Kazuhiko Shimura, the city manager of the Kofu city's industrial department in Yamanashi prefecture. It's funny, I didn't realize Kofu's kind of like quasi Tokyo. Tokyo kind of like juts out. It's like a long sort of sausage-shaped prefecture, and it's at the very end, sort of the western end of that is Yamanashi prefecture and Kofu. So trains that commute into Tokyo, like the longest trains, like the end of the train line is like Kofu for the Chuo line. Well, you can already see the presentation. Apparently, when he gave a pep talk to new city employees, he pointed out the population problem that Japan was having, and suggested that it was the responsibility of city employees that they could fix it just by having a good time. In particular, he suggested that it'd be, Japan has a population problem, and it's so easy to fix. You've just gotta get around, and especially fellas. You've just got to be a bit more persistent with the ladies, and focus on having a good time, and the babies will just increase in no time. I'm not sure he was fully thinking through the statement, and just saying that it was up to men. And by the way, if it sounds creepy to you, the idea of joining a company and having the boss or manager encourage you to hit on fellow employees. I've had that. That at Tokyo Marine. It was manager mentioned, hey, have you been to any company gokons yet? Any matchmaking parties yet? And one time, just out of curiosity, I did go along. but it was actually because it was just because I was the only foreigner in the building, and the people there weren't actually like into foreigners. They just wanted to like meet me, and so I was just brought along basically like as a panda for the whole thing. I wasn't taking it seriously myself anyway, so that was all sort of cool. But yeah, that's a thing. But the idea that a city council worker says, "Hey guys," I mean, again, he's saying fool around is his, he's not saying get married and have children because, people can't afford to get married or raise children. But he's saying, guys, fool around and the population will increase. So he seems to be encouraging, well, apart from the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of implications of that are bad. And in a way, it is the entire attitude, I suppose, that the population problem can be fixed by men fooling around, presumably without taking appropriate countermeasures. And I mean, again, if what do you think? I mean, again, the traditional way in Japan, as in most of the world, of course, is to, get someone knocked up and then have the old shotgun thing happen. But, yeah, well, again, I think casual attitudes that, hey, you just need to have more sex and just, guys, you just need to ask girls out more. Thinking that that's the problem is exactly the problem, I think. I think it's fairly well established that people, even when they're married, even who want kids, are holding back from having kids because it's so expensive. And, when you realize that the wife is most likely going to be pressured to quit their job to raise, when you have kids. And nowadays, it's almost impossible to have any decent sort of economic ability to sustain a family on one income. For a lot of people, it's based on having two incomes, combined with all of the obligation and hassle, not just in terms of raising kids and taking them to school and making lunches, but also that then happens with families and whatnot after you marry and so on. And this is why the marriage rate is declining, and it's entirely because of the burden on women. So, again, heart's in the right place, but the pep talk that, hey guys, you're just going to fall around and the population will increase is exactly why the population has collapsed in Japan. But Kofu City, happening place. I imagine not a lot of women are going to be applying for that place. But yeah, that was an interesting pep talk. So that was the first story that I picked up. Hey, yeah, screw the population. Indeed. Would Japanese folks really listen to this guy for sexual advice? Well, I mean, obviously he's not offering a lot of sexual advice other than the Nike logo. But I think the problem is that he's basically giving a green light to inappropriate behavior, possibly by new hire, young male employees. So, I mean, when the boss says, hey, just go for it, just hit on the chicks. I mean, I've seen Mad Men. There are times in history that apparently, it was okay to sort of just go around and hit on all the women at work. And when you're being encouraged to do that in your welcome speech by the city, chief administrator, yeah, I imagine that'd create a really safe work environment. So do people listen to that guy for advice? I don't know that it's so much that take it as advice that they should take, as that take it as a green light to do things that they shouldn't do, or that they should at least be quasi-respectful about doing. It's signals, Jerry, signals. I think it sends a signal that is going to bite a lot of people back on the ass. So yes, I think that's the situation with that. That is the first story. Quickly looking at the comments, there's a lot of comments there, so many. Remember, if you want to get my specific attention, say Hiko-san, because I'll notice it faster because I can't read them all fast enough. But well, the Andrea Mobboy could very well be boxing glove butter. I don't understand that at all. R.I.P. Hiko. I don't know what happened to me there. What's the title for this short video going to be? Well, I don't know that this even constitutes a short video, but I think I have a suggestion in the video information below. I didn't think of little quasi titles, but Aaron, I think you're actually much better. You get your thumbnail game is excellent, and your titling game is also pretty strong. So there. Next topic. Boom. This was there was a feature on NHK the other day. This slide is in Japanese, but allow me to explain. So apparently this week actually marked the 75th anniversary of universal suffrage, since men and women could vote. Apparently 1946, which would have actually been during the GHQ occupation of Japan, right after World War II, women were allowed for the first time equal voting rights to men in Japan. And remarkable statistic there that apparently, in 1946, after those first elections, when women were both able to run and vote in the parliamentary elections for the first time, the result was 39 women were elected, representing 8.4% of the diet at the time. Zoom forward, of course, 75 years. I mean, so much has progressed, of course, and Japanese society no different. Now there is an astounding growth to 46 representatives representing 9.9% of people in parliament are women. Some might say that an increase of 8.9%, 8.4% to 9.9% since 1946 means Japan practically hasn't changed since when they just gave women the vote. And you might say that, but you see, if you've ever had a savings account in a Japanese bank, you would understand that, normally interest, I thought it was like a prank or it was a typo when they first showed the interest on your post office bank account of 0.00 something percent or 0.0 something percent. It's kind of a slap in the face, the interest that they give. If you think of, representation of women in parliament in terms of a post office bank savings account, although you know what, even then it would probably be higher than 9.9% by now representation. But from that perspective, that would explain the very, very small incremental numbers, as I've talked about in the previous week's show. What's really frustrating about this, apart from the fact that Japan is 9 places behind Saudi Arabia in international parliamentary representation rankings, it's something which Japan, because it has a proportional representation system, it has a system that, frankly, they could put anybody on the list that they like. Parties actually decide all the time to set voluntary quotas. All the government has to do is decide what to do with its party list. And it can automatically just increase or manipulate the number of women as it sees fit. Now, granted, of course, you want people who actually want to be parliamentarians and you want people who are qualified and will be good for it. But there again, the qualification issue clearly hasn't been an issue for a lot of the people who are in parliament. And not just in Japan, by the way. And, there's all sorts of people who decide, hey, one day I'm going to run for parliament. I've never run for parliament before. Sometimes you get. New Zealand's prime minister, I think she's Jacinda's still in her 30s. Some people obviously do it because they're good for it, but other people do it just simply because they are interested in representing their community or a group of the community. And there are plenty of women who work in, for example, NGOs, community sort of charity organizations, who work as civil servants, who are in various forms of public service, and would have backgrounds which I think they could be picked up for. It is pretty awful. This is a couple of weeks after these pretty shocking World Economic Forum statistics came out, but and again, the fact that NHK was pointing out they actually found, as you can in Japan, when they have the 75th anniversary of universal suffrage, they can actually find someone who voted in 1946 and ask her what she thinks. And even then, people are sort of like, it hasn't really changed, has it? And that's still the case. It's not an easy problem to fix, but surely you can do something. You'd like to think that the country could have moved forward a little bit more. So, that is an embarrassing number. So, all of that said, apparently out of the proportional list, so 女性比率、比率、各国会の女性比率20 so actually so maybe the 9.9% is overall representation, and the 25.5% is the parliamentary representation. Still ranks Japan very, very low, and it is the greatest ever, but it still is embarrassingly low. So it just shines a light on a topic I talked about last week from a different thing, but the fact that it wasn't even commemorated, that women getting the vote, which is a big deal. Half of the population getting, it's hard to say the country's really democratic, until women get the vote. So, this is kind of the 75th anniversary of democracy in a way. And I think that's the way that all democratic countries should mark their day of universal suffrage, as well as civil rights, as well as basically equal voting rights without discrimination based on race or gender, which actually, and bear in mind, this is not a problem unique to Japan. Gender was generally, I think Ohio was the first, and New Zealand was the first country. We came just after Ohio. back in the 1870s. But, if you factor in things like racial restrictions on voting, I mean, Australia took until like the 1960s or early 1970s. So South Africa took until the 1990s. So, I don't know. People, I think countries really should celebrate. I realize it's kind of embarrassing. But in Japan's case, it was relatively not so bad in terms of when it did this. But it's more the progress that it's made since. And I think that's why the day should be marked more. So that's what I think about that. Into the topics. Paragoti sup indeed. Andrea Mowbray, sorry, you phased out when I started talking numbers. Almost midnight there. Yes, my confused numbers, they do have that effect. So yes, anyway, that is that story. I'm going to move to the next one. Boom. This one maybe should have just gone to the end, but it's just so crazy. I'll just put it in here. So at the time that we are unquestionably, I'll give the proper COVID update later, but basically Osaka is considering now going into full state of emergency. The numbers there are going crazy, almost certainly because of the mutant strains that have come in and are more contagious. Everyone is saying, particularly the UK strain seems to be wreaking havoc, as well as there are some mutations that seem to have evolved in Japan and seem possibly resistant to the shot that they're rolling out. So that's a thing. But yeah, basically, whereas right now, Miyagi Prefecture or Okinawa Prefecture, Osaka Prefecture, Hyogo Prefecture, Nara Prefecture, as well as Tokyo Prefecture are going crazy in terms of numbers. This guy comes up again, still remembering he's got to make good on his $450,000 donation from the tourism industry, and said, not only should we restart GoTo travel as soon as possible, but we shouldn't stop it merely because we're afraid. I quote, if we don't do things just because we're afraid, then we'll never do anything. And I pointed out that, I think I said this on Twitter, that, the reason that I don't put my head in a blender is because I'm afraid. And sometimes being afraid is the right thing, is the right basis for a decision. The fact that right now Japan is clearly going into a fourth wave without any preparedness or readiness for vaccination, and this guy is still saying that we should be subsidizing people traveling all over the place and going to restaurants, just shows how crazy the politics here is. So yes, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, and getting sick and dying, I think should be the should be the slogan. Oh, by the way, speaking of all of this, I have to share, I was tempted to share last night, totally unrelated topic, but on 2.5 Voyages last week, I knew that there was a YouTube Hanami this year, and I didn't say anything about it because I figured, look, if I say something about it, I'm going to say something negative. I'm going to say you're an idiot, don't do that. I'm going to be judgy and, preachy and puritanic and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of thought, well, look, I'm definitely not going to encourage it. I think it's the wrong thing to do. But at the same time, people can make, people are adults. They can make their own decisions. And when Victor asked me about it on 2.5 Voyages last week, I kind of let the I let the dam burst, and I expressed my opinion when I knew there was a guy, Bushido Devil Dog, was there in the comments who had attended. And I said, listen, I think it was a mistake. I think it was like having a barbecue during a fire, ban. I just think it was irresponsible, and technically I still think that. My position on that hasn't changed. And I guess I really wanted to give my cool metaphor for how wrong it was and how right I am. But at the same time, here's the thing: I on Instagram I saw the photos of it, and it doesn't change any of the fact that it wasn't a smart thing to do, and it wasn't a responsible thing to do. And I worry about a bunch of gaijins in a park. I mean, in a park where, granted, they weren't fully blocking the hanamis, and other people were also doing hanamis. Well, it's not a good look. You know what? I saw the photos of the people at the Tokyo Hanami the other week, and everyone looked so happy. And it was so nice to see everybody, frankly, getting together. And it's something I miss. I mean, I wouldn't have gone this year. I'm looking forward to going next year, I hope. But you know what? It was great to see so many people that I like and that seem to be enjoying it, including Bushido Devil Dog. And I thought immediately after, like, why did I say that? Like, I didn't need to make him feel crap. Like, he wasn't sharing the fact that he went in order for me to unload. He was sharing it to say he had just had a nice day. And I saw the photos of it, and they all had nice days. And yeah, like I say, I'm never going to support something like that until it's safe, and I'm hoping it's going to be safe soon. But at the same time, I feel bad that I kind of, I let out a pent up comment that should have stayed pent up, frankly. So I apologize to anyone who went to the Hanami that heard that comment and felt crap because of what I said. I mean, yeah, like I say, I don't apologize for the thought or the logic. I think the thought and the logic is sound, but I'd actually taken a decision myself not to say that. And when I said it, you know what? It didn't need to be said. I think the people going there were all smart enough to know that there was a risk being taken, and it was up to them. And I was happy to leave it up to them. So, one thing I do want to say, anyone watching this, who saw the thing last week, and may not be watching this week because of it, I'm sorry. And by the way, I didn't get any particular reaction. This is just me thinking about it. I really did actually see the photos, and I did think, wow, that was actually really nice. It was really nice to see everyone. So I hope you did have a good time at the Hanami. At the same time, of course, please stay safe and be responsible and whatnot. But yes, like I say, the temptation, and not I want to say temptation. I mean, it's not even it's a need that people have to go out and to be outside of their house and to see other people and socialize. And like I say, I'm really sympathetic to the businesses that rely on that are impacted. I'm sympathetic to the people who are missing that. I feel it myself. I just, at the same time, when I look at guys like this, kind of tapping into that, frankly, for what I think is a self-gain kind of purpose. I have to say you're a doofus. I have to say, Nikai-san, you're a doofus. But I have to be really careful. I really understand the pressure that people are under, and I want to go to as well. I want to take a travel coupon. I want to support the travel industry, and you know what? As soon as I get my shot, and most of the country has their shots, I am looking forward to everyone. Unload the GoTo money, pour it on me. Pour the sugar on me. What can I say, Nikai? Do it, but after the vaccines, just not before. Just like, I don't want to get someone sick. I don't want to get sick myself. So that's the thing. But I really feel for people who are struggling right now, and I'm sorry if that came across like I was being judgy or condemning people doing something that they made a thoughtful decision to do. So anyway, just wanted to say that. Into the comments, Raz, good to see you, Raz. It has been a long pandemic, and I'm very sympathetic to people who are exhausted by it. Like Mr. Cordychip, although I realize that's a different reason. But who else is in here? Paragotti, no need to apologize. You're more than entitled to your opinion. Yeah, I'm entitled to my opinion, but here's the thing. Everyone's got opinions. I kind of decided I didn't need to share it. I didn't need to be weighing down on people. I think it's so easy nowadays to get into judgmental lynch mobs, and even me, everybody feels the urge. But I regret that one anyway. So yeah. Quinn Ranked, before I jump forward, Quinn Ranked, are the shots effective? Will there be a time when they are? Well, look, the shots that we're getting here are going to be the Pfizer ones, although they're also getting a bunch of the AstraZeneca ones. I must admit, if I have a choice between the Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca, which we may have by the time that they get round to me having a turn, the Pfizer one seems to be the best one, but there again, I read a thing today that apparently it's not as effective on the South African variant, and this is the thing, the disease itself is evolving. Although I also read some news day before yesterday that, drug companies are actually figuring out that they might actually be able to make a pan-coronavirus, vaccine which could work on all coronaviruses, which would be awesome. And you think about what that means. That also means not only, SARS, MERS, COVID, it could actually mean a lot of mild sort of colds and so on as well. Like the fact that all the medical research spurred by this whole COVID thing is leading, and the push on these RNA viruses, and the fact that it's leading to effective HIV vaccines, cancer vaccines. We're talking all of a sudden. We're talking about incurable diseases the way that we talk about the flu, and people saying that these things are on a schedule now. It's incredible. The current shots, however, if I have a choice, I'd take the Pfizer just because it's got this amazing track record. I like the idea of the Johnson & Johnson one, that you can get it in one shot. The AstraZeneca one, frankly, I look at the BBC and I see them, it's kind of, it pisses me off how BBC is always in, as we'll get to in some of the other stories, if it's something happening in another country, they're like, well, the Japanese government says that it's safe, but can you trust the Japanese government? But when it's the UK, when you've got 10 countries in Europe stopping the vaccine to check if there's a blood clotting issue. And, BBC is like, all is well. Other countries mistakenly stopping, like they're actually putting in the sort of pro-pharma, pro-government sort of propaganda thing to sort of to calm the people. And I get it, but the double standard is laid bare that, they are a Ministry of Information for the British government, and, and sometimes hysterical tabloid journalists for everyone else. It can feel like that sometimes. But all of them seem to work, and honestly, I'll take whatever one is available. There's not. I would take the Sputnik shot. I mean, provided I got the real one. It sounds like some countries have some problems with the deliveries, but hell, even the Sinovac, even the Chinese ones, they're all demonstrated to be effective to different degrees. And honestly, I'm not hesitating to take. But it sounds like the one that we've got in Japan is a good one. So yeah. Dan H, doesn't Japan have the highest percentage of anti-vaxxers? I think what you think of anti-vaxxers, or what I think of as anti-vaxxers in other countries and anti-vaxxers in Japan, are different. Japanese are cautious. They express skepticism. They worry about side effects. But I don't think that the percentage of people who see vaccines as being like a conspiracy to inject diseases and microchips and, some sort of pharma conspiracy against people, the sort of conspiracy theory kind of type of anti-vaxxers, that shots will give you autism and those sorts of crazy stuff. That type of anti-vax, which I associate with the term anti-vax, I'm sure that exists in Japan, but I've never heard it in Japan. I mean, other than seeing small groups of like 10 people holding signs in front of a train station, there is a very broad general skepticism. There's not much in the way of public health programs. So, for example, most vaccines, like the HPV vaccine, for example, are available, but the government doesn't really promote vaccines, aggressively, and there's a lot of information available on side effects and so on. So yeah, you have people being cautious. A lot of people express caution, but I'd be really surprised if there was actually a rejection of the shots. When they become available, I think I personally expect that a lot of people in Japan, that it'll be a pretty high adoption rate, but we'll see. Maybe the concerns about side effects will translate into people not getting the shot, but I'm certainly doing it. And look, whenever they have the flu shots at work, which they give out for free, once a year, pretty much everyone in the building, not everyone, and you know what, it's voluntary to go get it, but I'm in a line of hundreds of people at work queuing up for the free flu shot, which isn't mandatory, but people take it. So yeah, I think there's a high percentage of people who are just very conservative and worried about risk, and who digest all of this information, but I don't think that they're like anti-vaxxers that you see in the news. Iraq 299, good to see you. Squirrel, yes, Aaron, thank you. I'm definitely chasing squirrels. Let's get back into it. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications has decided to set a standard for digital signatures and digital Hankos, digital seals in Japan, which it was just basically being wrapped up. It should be published this month. As someone who works in a job that involves contracts, this is a big deal for me, because it is a thing in Japan that people kind of look at me where if you have a month to negotiate a contract with a Japanese company, and you work backwards, okay, so what do you have to do by when? Most countries in the world, if you've got like 30 days to negotiate a contract, then you've got 27 days and then 3 days to do the formalities. In Japan, if you have a month to negotiate a contract, you've got 7 days and then 3 weeks to do the formalities, because the sealing process actually is like a ritual. Apart from the board approvals and those things, which might not change with electronic seals, then you've got to actually physically print it, prepare it, and have it go on the batch of documents that go to the president when they're around and they have the time, and they just go and stamp the things. So just for speed and efficiency, and the fact that people won't lose contracts, the fact that people know if contracts are actually signed or not, not if they're sitting in someone's desk drawer. Believe me, I have seen crazy stuff. So I am very much looking forward to this. And there are companies getting in 20 years late, but I actually use electronic signatures for a lot of contracts. And there are some holdout companies that just, if it's not approved in the manual, if it doesn't say you can do it, then the answer is you can't do it, even if it's just simply because someone hasn't updated the manual in 20 years. So the fact that the government's actually putting out an explicit standard for this means that those company manuals, it's going to give me an ability to push back and say, hey, even the Japanese government, says that you can use electronic signatures now. If you don't believe me, just go fax them and ask. I can now say that to people. So I'm hoping to get rid of having to do the old. I actually enjoy. I do sometimes do it, or I've done it before, pressing the stamp. It makes you feel kind of important, but it's completely archaic and unnecessary. I mean, it's not quite the old wax sealing. It does make you feel like a sort of Middle Ages king, I suppose. But that wears off pretty fast. So I'm very excited about this. Kustos, if that's how I pronounce it correctly. Good to have you in the chat here. And yes, everybody else, day and age public broadcasters are indeed akin to state propaganda. Yeah, of course, they've got a public information. And certainly if you've got an earthquake or whatever, a civil emergency, which I think COVID counts as, they've got that. But again, it's always kind of annoying when... I go back to the Fukushima thing, which I'm going to be coming back to in a moment, and the tones of reporting. It's kind of annoying when public broadcasters of other countries say, don't believe them, they're a public broadcaster. And that's the information that you have to rely on as civil defense information. That's super annoying and irresponsible. So I'll let the UK, if they want to be the... Boris's mouthpiece, they're welcome to be it, but yes, the hypocrisy comes through sometimes. Lysander 45, good to have you here in the comment. You missed a lot of squirrels, Lysander 45, but good to have you in here. Kustos, well, but that said, the effectiveness of it is amazing. The Israeli data is amazing. I don't care. I'm totally partying up to get the Pfizer vaccine. Hopefully, if I can get it, but we'll see. Anyway, next one. I talked last week about the cannabis thing, and I talked about how the history of cannabis in Japan, and how it was actually hemp was actually the backbone of the whole Japanese sort of culture and war machine and religion. Until GHQ outlawed it during the 1940s, during the occupation, and how Japan totally bought into that. I said I didn't have a link at the time. I just talked about that. I'd read some interesting articles and on what the sustainability Japan with JJ Walsh on Friday. She actually raised it as well. She thought it was a fascinating topic, and I was like, oh yes. I went and found the links. Just more stories there. I'm not going to linger on this, but just to mention there are some good reads about this, which just go into the history of just how integral hemp is in Japanese culture, and how abruptly how the current regulation of it is really inconsistent with Japanese history and the use of it. Going back like 20,000 years, they've found it. It's not clear that people actually smoked the stuff, by the way, but they certainly used it. I mean, hemp is just a very useful plant. And it's just kind of insane the way that it's been demonized, and on top of that, the Japanese consulates and and embassies and so on have been sending out emails threatening their own citizens in other countries where it's legal not to use it. This is crazy. So, just some extra notes. Those are not real stories tonight, but I wanted to give the update on that. One of the stories I really wanted to talk about tonight is Suga meets with the fisheries rep over wastewater. So there's, as you all know, there is an interesting situation happening since 2011 that with, of course, the Fukushima nuclear reactor having melted down, the rods and everything have melted. I don't understand this very well, but what I understand is that the reactor core, however, if it went dry, and this is one of the scenarios that was being debated for months after the accident, it wasn't clear whether the reactor was actually exposed to the air and whether there was actually, plutonium being atomized and being carried up in the air like an A-bomb explosion, basically like nuclear fallout. If there was a question whether there was actually fallout material falling over Tokyo, and this was the scenario that would be the scenario that I would have cancer or Tokyo would be evacuated by now. That people believe, and this is a scenario that the U.S. military and U.S. government actually said that they thought was happening. It's the scenario that a lot of anti-nuclear activists went onto media and said they assume is happening, which contradicted the information, which, thank heavens, that the pool wasn't dry. The pool that was cooling the reactor rods in Fukushima actually did have water and continues to have water. And in order, again, to stop, as they decommission the plant, they still have to keep the nuclear material cool, and so they have been pumping coolant through the plant, even following the accident, basically since 2011. However, given that the whole plant was sort of broken, and it wasn't clear what was going on inside the reactor for such a long time, they made the decision that where a normal nuclear plant, you would run basically, the reason they're always beside the ocean is that they use seawater for this purpose. They capture seawater, they pump it through basically around the reactor to keep it cool. Not through the plutonium per se, or maybe they do, but they do something with it to basically, it'll have some tritium in it, it'll have some short half-life radioactive material in it, but they'll treat it and dilute it enough that it can basically, on a normal nuclear reactor, it will be basically sent back out into the ocean, in front of the nuclear reactor. And by the way, I have surfed before the accident, obviously. I've surfed right beside the Fukushima nuclear reactor. Best surfing of my entire life was right beside that nuclear reactor, actually. In Fukushima, it's got amazing surfing, beautiful beaches. Obviously not very good for it now. But the point is that Japan's whole coastline, and America and Europe have coastlines dotted with these nuclear plants that are constantly sucking up seawater, using it for cooling, and putting it back out into the sea, in constant operation. With Fukushima, they didn't actually know if it was safe or what was going on with the plant, so they made this decision that they would suck up all of this water, but rather than pump it back out like they normally would, they weren't sure if it was safe. They decided to keep it all in these barrels on site. So basically, what's normally an ongoing pumping in and out process around these plants, they decided to store on the Fukushima site. And so basically, you have now, and these are vast amounts of water, have been going around, sort of keeping the reactor core cool now for 10 years. And but instead of pumping it back out to the sea, they've been putting it into these tanks, and basically there's no room left on the site, and the tanks themselves are starting to sort of break and so on. And the Japanese government, it's been a problem for a long time. Like, what are you going to do? You can't just keep storing this stuff forever. You actually have to figure out what to do with it at some point. So the Japanese government has been sort of agonizing over what to do with this, aware of the the damage in terms of image and reputation taken to Fukushima food and fish. And by the way, if you live in Tokyo, frankly anywhere in Honshu or whatever, and you go to a restaurant or you eat in a cafeteria, if you're eating vegetables, that all vegetables and food sold from Fukushima in Japan are all tested and they're proven safe. But of course, if you put Fukushima on the label, you're not going to be able to sell it in a supermarket. However, they do sell those foods, and Fukushima was like the Texas of Japan. It was the breadbasket. So that food is still being sold. It's all tested and safe, and it's being sold in wholesale markets, which are being used in school cafeterias and restaurants and so on. And if you eat out in Japan, no question, you've eaten Fukushima food. But of course, the image of putting Fukushima on the label of anything edible, fish or whatever, has been this thing. And of course, countries like Korea, I think, still prohibit imports of fish and seafood from Fukushima. Even if you test the food and prove that it's safe, it's like, no, we don't trust you. We're not allowing anything. And it's even within Japan, you can't really sell it. Nobody wants to buy that. So to overcome the reputational issues taken a really, really long time. And now that the government's basically, they've got this water problem and they've come to the conclusion the only thing that they can do is release it out into the ocean, all of this stored up water. Now, as I am not knowledgeable about this, but what I understand is that the IAEA uses standards for the amount of tritium, the amount of radioactive sort of byproduct in the resulting treated water, and how much is safe to release. However, this is how much that's safe to release on the normal ongoing pump-in, pump-out basis, not on storing it for 10 years and releasing it all at once. That's kind of a different sort of thing. But they do have what they deem to be no effect on a standard that represents no effect on the environment, which is what most nuclear power plants have. The government's just sort of come to the point where all of this stuff is sort of just sitting on site, and it's starting to the tanks are starting to crack. They're running out of room, and they have to release this stuff. And so the government took a decision this week, right before the Olympics of all times as well, to that they're going to have no choice. They're going to have to start releasing the stored up water on site into the ocean. And they've been emphatic that the water itself has been treated, and it actually does meet the IAEA standards for basically should have no effect on the environment or health. It's super diluted. It's the same as what goes out of any nuclear power plant. Of course, the big difference is, well, two things. One is that there's a lot of it, and that's been stored 10 years worth of the stuff that they're proposing releasing at once. That's not sort of normal. So it's quite, you got the question, are they using the right standards? And the other thing, of course, is just the general, do you trust the man? Can this be relied upon? And of course, as we've learned up and down, when you say anything about anything nuclear related, the mistrust and hysteria that immediately goes. There are a lot of people already, of course, freaking out. Japan is about to release, and they say Japan's about to release radioactive water, into the Pacific Ocean, and they're about to poison the whole Pacific. Some people are sort of saying now, the water. From my perspective, I love surfing in Ibaraki, which is down current from Fukushima. I'm not planning to surf in Fukushima again, but if I want to ever go surfing or fishing in Fukushima, I eat food from Fukushima. I eat fish from Fukushima. I know that this happens if I eat out, and I want to go surfing in Ibaraki again. So to me, this is not a propaganda war. This is again personal safety that I'm interested in this, and I want to understand. Is it something I should reconsider surfing in Ibaraki after they do this? So how safe is the water? What is actually in it? Does it contain plutonium? Does it contain tritium? How much is safe? What is safe? What is the normal standard? And truth is, I don't know. The government of Japan has a lot to explain. If history is any indicator, frankly, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be shouting very loud, and they're not going to be listening to anything because they just have an agenda of proving that nuclear power is evil. And that and that the world's going to end all over again, like they said back in 2011, and we're proven on a lot of things to be wrong. But that said, what I want as having just given the BBC a hard time for being a public broadcaster, I do want to know. What's the equation here? How safe is this? What is the risk? They're already talking about paying. They know it's going to cause more problems for the fishing industry, and they're talking about paying compensation to them because they know it's going to be harder to sell their fish. But it's not just Fukushima. It's going to affect the whole Pacific coast of Japan. So we're waiting for more information on this. It's interesting that they're planning to do this ahead of the Olympics, particularly with countries like my own country, New Zealand, which is completely hysterical on anything nuclear, like power. New Zealand just outlawed everything nuclear, apart from like radiology medicine. They outlawed power, they outlawed weapons, they outlawed sort of everything just to be safe back in the 80s, and that's still very deep-seated. Germany, of course, completely irrational when it comes to, they went back to coal pretty much instead of nuclear power. No question. They made some honestly uninformed decisions based on Fukushima. Japan did stop all the nuclear reactors, but not to decommission them. They did it to actually improve the safety and reliability of this, which they've been doing for 10 years. They're upgrading all of their reactors, and they will come back online. I always find it's remarkable that other countries actually freaked out more than Japan and reacted more than Japan to a disaster that happened in Japan. But this case as well, this is going to be a big deal, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of it's going to be hard to get the real sort of information, but in these cases you can only trust the government scientists who you have to believe as a resident that these are people who are civil servants whose jobs are to consider what's safe for their own kids and for their own communities that they live in and that they support. So we'll see. I don't know how safe this is going to be. They do say that it does meet the IAEA standards and the water is going to be treated appropriately before it's released, but they are going to release a lot. Like the volume, do they say on here? It's pretty crazy, and there's going to be a lot of talk about this. Every day they are producing, so you imagine this, they're producing 140 tons of contaminated water every day for 10 years. So the number, it's like a quadrillion tons or some ridiculous amount that they're planning to release. So it's going to be a big deal. South Korea, of course, is freaking out, but honestly, they've been freaking out at everything, and they're on the other side, right? But yeah, but that said, it'll be interesting to see. The water is used to cool molten nuclear fuel, and it's mixing with rainwater and groundwater. And this is the problem right now, is that sitting on site, it's leaking into groundwater. So, they're again, lesser of evils. They're thinking of putting it into the ocean. but we're going to find out. This is going to be another big topic in coming weeks, and who knows, it could actually affect, it could be used as another excuse to affect the Olympics. We'll see, but that's a big decision that the government just made this week, that they're going to do this, they're going to release this, so that's a thing. Sleepy314, yo, from Santa Cruz, CA Mavericks was flat during spring break. I'm sorry to hear that. I went to Mavericks once. I was in San Francisco for work, like, geez, more than 10 years ago, and I drove down to Mavericks. It was like a super low tide. So I actually walked out and climbed on top of the rocks, which are normally, there's like some rocks which are normally in the water, like right where, people are just before the sort of where the lineup is at Mavericks. So I actually walked out and climbed on top. There were no waves at all, but Mavericks is, man, that's cool. You can be near there. I'm jealous. Good night, Andrea Moboy. Have a good night there. Other people, I see other comments. If you like I said, if you do like Andrea Moboy and you do add Echo Simon, I will actually stop and read the comment. But otherwise, I will keep pushing on. We've got 5 minutes to go. Easy. Interesting this week, I actually saw something that was shared with me on Twitter last night, that in addition to Google announcing that it was blocking terms associated with hate speech from being used as keywords on YouTube videos, i.e. They were increasing the list of terms that would not be, if you use them on the video or even in the video. I don't know if they can actually detect it in the video yet, but for example, things like white power or white lives matter or whatever, if you put that in your title, chances are you're not going to be monetized. I saw somebody share a link with me last night, which wasn't verified, so I'm not going to... Oh, in fact, it is down here as well. The markup reached out to YouTube parent company for comment. It said that the company actually blocked more social justice terms, including black excellence and civil rights. That's kind of messed up. I mean, someone was asking me, so YouTube is blocking videos that include terms black excellence and civil rights? Well, one, I don't know if that's actually the case. That's what some internet researchers said that they found. If it is the case that these words are causing this, remember, it's not that YouTube is blocking the videos, it's that they're blocking monetization. That said, what blocking monetization means is it means that advertisers who advertise on YouTube, who pay Google to put their ads on videos, have said, I don't want my ads for my ethical, coffee, South American coffee to be placed next to videos about civil rights. So somehow I can only assume that advertisers have told Google that they don't want ads next to videos about black excellence or civil rights. That's kind of screwed up, and I'd really like to know which advertisers didn't want that. But not only is it screwed up, that advertisers would ask to be removed from, that they asked for videos on civil rights to be demonetized. But the fact that Google said, yeah, okay, why not? It's kind of awkward, obviously, to have that part of the algorithm made public, but apparently that's what they found out. So that is interesting. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Google's on a minefield. I do not care if these videos are monetized or not. Oh, why not? I'll turn it on. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I can see that would actually, the idea that might discourage free speech, or it might discourage people who are doing YouTube with the goal of monetization. If they find out that information, I'm not allowed to talk about civil rights anymore, that is a concern. That said, I don't know that anybody smart relies on YouTube for an income anymore anyway, just because it feels random. And obviously, if they're ad blocking videos with the term civil rights, of course it's going to feel random, because that doesn't make any sense. But people know that the income is so unstable. Even people who are doing very well, that they go out and they get all these sponsorships and endorsements, and they get stable income from that. So I would certainly hope that this doesn't have a chilling effect on free speech. But there again, knowing that these are the ad words, I think is going to have a chilling effect. It's probably why it's a good thing that they keep it secret. But there again, if they're putting in screwed up terms, who knows? So that's an interesting thing that came out yesterday. I really think Google's got a problem if they are demonetizing videos talking about civil rights. I mean, what is it even for if it's not about that? Civil rights, black excellence. Count me in. I mean, demonetize me, bro. Really, I mean, that would be amazing. It's almost like that would be so funny. Yeah. So apparently that's a thing. Lysander 45, those words can be used as derogatory terms, so that is like the reason why. Good point, Lysander 45. Although civil rights used in a derogatory way, it seems like you would catch friendly fire on that. Perhaps sarcastic or deliberate use by trolls of, terms like that. Perhaps I could see how that might happen. Hey, believe in yourself. Good to see you. I can imagine that. I think I've heard them talking about that as well, that they're sort of innocuous terms that get picked up and sort of used as like coded language, and when they realize that that's happening, they demonetize it. But and this is again why I'd be really sensitive to have that information of what it is sort of come out like that. But yeah, that was surprising. Into the final stretch, we are up on 11:30. So COVID update. Basically, once again, pretty amazing to see. Oh, yes. So I was talking earlier about how amazing these RNA vaccines are, and this is the thing as well. I mean, yes, you're gonna get side effects, and you're gonna get people, having problems with these up to it, including the worst. I mean, it happens with all sorts of medical treatments. But there again, if you can get a vaccine with a 97%, antibody response rate in human trials, based on the Moderna COVID vaccine. So basically, they're talking about shots for HIV as effective or more effective than flu vaccines. I mean, that's just crazy. And hearing that they're able to do the same thing, they're able to actually target proteins in cancer cells and reprogram them and so on. Just crazy stuff at the moment. It's actually, this is like miracle medicine. And we might actually, if we all get our shots and get protected from COVID, and we come out the other end of this soon, we might look back on this as actually being the instigator of like a whole new medical revolution. It's just, to me, this is absolutely crazy that we can live in a time where we're seeing all this sort of innovation happening with vaccines. In Japan, there is a problem with the rollout. The main tomorrow, the general rollout to elderly begins, the 36 million elderly. The problem is that because the Japanese government has basically given every municipality in Japan the same amount, except they've given double the normal amount to Osaka and Tokyo, except of course Tokyo and Osaka have more than double the number of people of most municipalities. So the problem is that for the initial 3.7 million person medical worker rollout, while in some rural parts of Japan, they are making good progress, vaccinating all the medical workers, who then from tomorrow start themselves vaccinating. Once they're protected, they start vaccinating the elderly. Problem in Tokyo is that when you have some particularly highly densely populated areas, they haven't received enough vaccines yet. They haven't been distributed from the government appropriately. So in Taito Ward, only 16% of medical workers have even received their first shot, and they've got to have 2 shots 3 weeks apart. And so they've said they can't begin the rollout of vaccines to elderly because the rollout is already failing the medical workers who are supposed to get to first. So this is where the logistics wheels are coming off, and I was kind of giving the benefit of the doubt, and I still kind of am, at least on the supply issue part of it. Yes, Japan has to import these things. They're not making them here yet. They will be manufacturing the AstraZeneca vaccine in Japan, I think, by the end of May. But for now, they have to import all of them, and I'm sympathetic. They're not going to get them before the countries that make them have them. But the distribution thing is not common sense. It's the most densely populated areas that also have the highest rates that should be treated as a higher, urgency. Yet, again, because it's being delayed for the medical workers, it's going to be delayed for the elderly people in the areas that need it most. So this is definitely an aspect where the distribution of the vaccines is kind of failing from the government. And again, I hope they can recognize and do something to address the problem. But we are totally going into a fourth wave right now. Numbers going up every day, and they should be looking to, and at the freaking 200,000 person super spreader event coming in less than 100 days now. So we should be trying to. We're not going to vaccinate. I'm not going to get a shot before this, but we should at least be trying to vaccinate the most vulnerable people in Tokyo. Get the elderly sorted out first. So that's worrying. In order to speed up the approval of future vaccines, Japan has these very strict vaccine approval rules. That's one reason it took longer for them to get approved in Japan than elsewhere, although other places also went super fast. But yeah, there's been some criticism. Rochelle Kopp is one person who definitely has been criticizing that Japan does not permit the use of overseas data to be used in trials and approvals of vaccines for Japan. So even if you have vaccines that are being used everywhere and are proven safe, and there's data from millions of people, they'll only verify and authorize vaccines based on trials involving Japanese people, and this causes further delay. So there's been a bit of criticism about that, about what's wrong with the foreign data. And it seems like they're changing the rule now, and they will allow for future vaccines on variant vaccines. They are going to permit use of foreign data, particularly, I mean, when you have whole nations like Israel, millions of people that basically got first shots for sharing the data. Now they're actually agreeing that, yes, okay, that data is going to be referenceable and should help, again, speed up approval and distribution, which has been, I don't think it's been too bad yet. I mean, it hasn't really started yet. It doesn't start really until tomorrow for the general rollout, but it'll be nice if we can use reliable data that's been obtained elsewhere to get it faster here. That will be a good thing. Yeah, right now there's no state of emergency, but they are talking about enhanced measures, basically the same sort of restrictions as we saw as during the state of emergency, with restaurants closing more early and so on. This is, particularly in the worst affected places: Hyogo, Osaka, Kyoto, Tokyo, Miyagi, Okinawa, and Nara. I think today was also going terrible. Hey, Nick F, good to see you there in the comments. Try not to get distracted by the comments. And just for where it's at, like, Osaka's nearly up to 1,000 cases a day, and it's been skyrocketing up there, like 140% week over week. Tokyo's like going up 115%, but it's also starting to curve up a little bit. And it seems to be, well, mainly a combination. I've heard anecdotal information that people in Osaka have totally not been wearing masks as much, and they've been going to doing hanami parties and just doing drinking parties during the day before the restaurants close. So the measures to sort of get people to sort of stay at home haven't worked so well, I've heard, as part of it. But generally people are saying it's the more contagious UK variant. Seems to be the main culprit of the jump in Osaka and surrounding prefectures, and that's going to happen in Tokyo as well, so that's a concern. This guy, kind of interesting character. This is a guy who I talked about a few months ago. He was on a Peach Air, like a budget air carrier flight between Hokkaido and I think going back to Osaka or something like that, and he refused to wear a mask, and he became belligerent and started shouting and so on, and basically caused the plane to land and dump him off in Niigata a few months ago, and got into all sorts of trouble, and then became a bit of a celebrity for it. He's definitely an anti-masker. He refuses. He thinks that nobody has the authority, no plane, no restaurant, no law has the authority to make him wear a mask. And he actually happens to be a Tokyo University Masters of Law educated person, so sometime in his life he was at least good at taking exams. But apparently he got into a similar kerfuffle in a restaurant where he refused to wear a mask, and he got into a kerfuffle, and the police were called, and then he punched the police. And I tell you what, I've given the advice before in Japan, whatever happens, you do not want to punch the police. I mean, in a way, this guy kind of, honestly, it's kind of funny, him punching the police while he has it coming. When I say he has it coming, the police don't mess about. If you mess with them, you are in a lot of trouble. And he's going to be going to jail for a long time, probably before there's actually even a trial or anything like that. And he's a Masters of Law scholar from Tokyo University, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. But he punched a police officer in a restaurant arguing about wearing a mask, so that is a thing. Also, Hyogo, which is where Kobe is, going through a disaster at the moment, where the cases are skyrocketing along with Osaka. Apparently the local government there still wants to promote people going out to restaurants and so on, and they're offering a sensu, which is actually, it's a fan, but it's not that type of fan like they show in the picture. It's the type of cheap sort of plastic fan that's just round and fixed that you just take out at hanami sort of, or hanabi, like fireworks parties and so on. They're going to hand those out and encourage people to go to restaurants, but to use that to cover their mouths so that they don't give everyone around them COVID, which I think is not going to end well for Hyogo. So yes, good luck with that. Also, the Hachiwari Oji-san, the guy, sort of expert on predicting pandemics, who's got a lot of media attention, pointing out that nobody is actually talking about the risk of the Olympics and how it's going to affect both the vaccination rollout and the numbers for Tokyo. And yes, myself, I keep seeing these projections for when waves are going to happen, and they all look very smooth and linear, but there's no projection being put into, how the Olympics are going to change this risk. And I'm kind of interested now because there's not long to go. So yeah, this kind of taboo on talking about the Olympics is a thing. And speaking of the Olympics, we now having all the final Olympic qualifying events, including events in Tokyo, which is sort of seen as dress rehearsals for the Olympics. And apparently there was a diving World Cup was going to take place in Tokyo, and it was cancelled because the World Diving Association found that the Japanese government wasn't ready. They couldn't answer questions on travel arrangements and visas and for the athletes that were coming for the qualifying event in Tokyo. And the organizers of the venue, which is an Olympic venue, couldn't give any assurances around PCR testing or sort of other precautions to make sure the athletes would be adequately protected from COVID while the event was being held. They couldn't answer any of the questions. So they said that because they felt that Tokyo wasn't organized enough to provide adequate safety for the diving athletes in a Olympic qualifying event like 3 months before the Olympics, they cancelled the event. They actually afterwards, they got assurances from some of the sports, and they're partially now going to resume doing it. But again, it does look like people are just sort of blindly running into this, and the organization for the event is not yet in place. So that is also a concern. That is all the topics for tonight. Hey, Christopher Luke, good to see you. No problem. Well, you can still watch it. Recorded. I was distracted by Custos. I don't know what the death rate in Osaka is. The death rates overall are quite low still, but the infection rates are high. They don't actually publish the death rates on the daily. You can find the information, by the way. It is all on the public sites, but it's not on the summaries that I'm using. So I do not know. Anyway, I'm 10 minutes over, so just some cool videos. First birthday of Tokyo Wave. This is one of there are lots of good podcasts and YouTube-based podcasts about Japan and Japan news that'll like this show. This is one of the best ones, Tokyo Wave, and they don't have the viewers I think that they deserve, and frankly, they actually research and prepare adequately for their shows, their weekly shows. They talk for an hour. And if you're interested in Japan news, this is about the best podcast I could recommend. They are good. They are informed. I learned stuff from them. And highly recommend it. So Tokyo Wave, check it out. And I do dig the thumbnail. I wish I could have a thumbnail like that. So that's pretty cool. I also did Japan news and sustainability. What the sustainability with JJ Walsh on Friday. That was fun. We were looking back at the last month or two, sort of Japan-related sustainability topics. So I always have a good discussion with her, and it was a good show. So check that out. That was from Friday, and it's available on my channel. We used like a multi-platform streaming thing, so I put a recording of it on my channel, so it's there, and that was pretty cool. Last night on Give Me a Flake Man's channel, Katie and Eric, 2.5 Voyages. It was a fun show, so do check that. We've got some more shows planned. Victor sort of got the bug. He's got some guests and everything. So, so long as we keep going. I want to keep it sustainable, so I don't think we're going to do it every week. But we do have a show planned, I think, for next week. And we'll probably go to a monthly cycle after that. So, I'm really glad to be doing 2.5 Voyages again. It's a very easy show to do. It's always a lot of fun. So check out that show from last night if you're interested in that. Do we have Yes, we totally had technical issues. You watch. Go check out the show from last night. We had distinct technical issues. As well as from Aaron. Again, thank you for all the cool edited shows, including media facing censorship or the kerfuffle from. These are all shorts from the previous shows, the discussion about cannabis and the threatening of Japanese citizens, the gender equality ranking statistics and everything. So those videos are available as short versions during the week. We'll see what comes out from short videos from this one. But thank you everybody for following. And do they chase squirrels too? They do not. They are actually scripted and prepared, with occasional unscripted witty comments, not a rambling confused mess of squirrels like this is. But go check them out. Thank you for keeping me company, and remember to like if you liked. A lot going on at the moment. If you understand Japanese, do definitely check out the Gaikokujin to no Hatarakikata video series, which is going to go live on Wednesday, all at once. There's all sorts of stuff going on at the moment, but it's great. All of you keeping me company, I do appreciate it. Shubas, I would actually love to try the Panamanian coffee that you're having at the moment. You got to see all of me. Yes, well, that's what I have on offer. So thanks everyone for joining in the comments. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the comments also directed at me. Love to hear about the wave situation at Mavericks and everybody else as always. Have a good week, everybody. Brianna, thank you for joining, and yeah, I'll be back here same time. I got nowhere to go. I got nothing better to do. Oh, I am having an adventure. I am planning to go actually to work probably on Friday. So that's like for me like traveling to like Antarctica at this point. So we'll see, although it's not really a good time to be doing it, but yeah, should be an interesting week for me. All of you, please stay safe, as I will do as well. Have a good week. Kakita no peace. Have a good one.